Have you ever watched someone break a good heart just to feel bigger for a moment? And have you ever noticed how life stays quiet while a person is cruel, then suddenly becomes loud at the exact moment they think they have won? Welcome back to the channel. Tonight we are stepping into a story that feels like a storm, not because it is full of noise, but because it reveals something most people do not want to admit about themselves. The mind can become drunk on control. The ego can become hungry for obedience. And when that hunger is fed, even love can be treated like trash. But karma is not asleep. Karma is not slow because it is weak. Karma is slow because it is precise. It waits until the lesson can be felt, not just heard. This story begins in a place where the air is warm and the streets carry the sound of vendors, children, and radios playing songs that feel older than the buildings. People greet each other with familiarity, but they also watch each other with the quiet attention that small communities develop. In a place like this, respect is not only personal, it is social currency. If your name is honored, doors open. If your name is stained, even your own shadow feels heavy. A man named Kaito lived there, and if you asked the neighborhood who he was, they would say he was sharp, confident, a man who knew how to speak. Some would say he was successful. Others would say he was lucky. A few would say he was dangerous. That those voices were softer because people do not like to challenge confidence when it is wrapped in charm. Kaito married a woman named Amara. Amara was the kind of person who did not enter a room trying to win it. She entered quietly, and somehow the room became calmer. She was not weak, she was steady. She had the kind of patience that comes from knowing what matters and refusing to waste energy on what does not. When she loved with her whole life, but she did not love like a fool. She loved like a person who believed love should build, not burn. At first, their marriage looked like the kind of story people admire. Kaito provided. Imara cared. They planned for the future. They talked about children, a home, a better life than the one they grew up with. Kaito liked telling people that his wife respected him. He liked the way that sentence sounded, as if her respect was proof of his worth. But there is a difference between being respected and being worshipped. Kaito did not understand that difference, or maybe he did, and he simply did not care. When Amara became pregnant, something shifted in the home. Pregnancy changes the air of a family. Even people who pretend not to care begin to act more carefully. Neighbors smile differently. Elders offer advice. Friends bring small gifts. The coming child feels like a blessing that belongs to more than two people. Amara carried the pregnancy with quiet strength. Even when her body ached, she still cooked. She still cleaned. She still worked when she could. She still smiled when Kaito came home. But she also became more honest about her limits. Some days she needed rest. Some days she needed help. Some days she needed Kaito to be gentle, not only with his hands, but with his words. And that is where the hidden crack in Kaito's heart began to show. When a man believes love is service, he becomes angry when love asks for support. Kaito began coming home late. He began acting irritated by small things. He criticized the food. He complained about the house. He accused Amara of becoming lazy. He compared her to other women, not directly at first, but with little comments that were meant to sting just enough to remind her who he thought held power. Amara tried to talk. She tried to explain that pregnancy is not laziness. It is labor. It is the body building a human life. She tried to remind him that they were a team. But Kaito did not want team. He wanted a throne. There was also another presence in the background. A friend of Kaito named Seifu. Seifu was the type of man who laughed loudly at his own jokes and treated commitment like a trap. He was not evil in a dramatic way. He was simply careless with other people's souls. He had a talent for turning responsibility into something to mock. When Kaito complained to Seifu about Amara, Seifu fed the worst part of him. He said, "Women become difficult when they think they have you. You must show strength. If she senses softness, she will control you." These words are poison, but they are sweet to an ego that is afraid of being ordinary. Kaito began to treat his home like a battlefield. Each conversation became a test. If Amara asked for help, he saw disrespect. If she asked a question, he saw accusation. If she cried, he saw manipulation. His mind had become a factory for bad interpretations, and every bad interpretation became another reason to justify cruelty. This is one of the most brutal karmic patterns in human relationships. When the mind becomes addicted to being right, it will sacrifice love to protect pride. One evening, the wind carried dust into the doorway as Kaito arrived home. He had been drinking with Seifu, not enough to fall, but enough to loosen the leash on his impulses. He entered the house and saw Amara sitting, holding her belly with one hand while stirring a pot with the other. The house smelled like food and quiet effort. Instead of feeling gratitude, Kaito felt annoyance. He looked at her and said, "Use it all day, and still the house looks like this." Amara turned her head slowly. Her eyes were tired, but calm. She said, "I have been on my feet since morning. The baby is heavy today. Please, speak gently." That sentence, "Please speak gently," should have been a moment of tenderness. It should have been a doorway back to love. But for Kaito, it felt like a challenge, because his ego had started confusing gentleness with weakness. He slammed his hand on the table and said, "Do not tell me how to speak in my own house." Amara stayed quiet for a moment. Silence can be wisdom, but it can also be fear. In her silence, she measured him. She remembered the man she married, and she saw the man standing in front of her now, wearing the same face but carrying a different spirit. She said, "This is our house, not yours alone. And the child inside me is ours. If you cannot respect me, at least respect the life we are bringing." That was the moment Kaito snapped, because truth can feel like a slap to a person who has been lying to themselves. He shouted words that should never be shouted at a pregnant woman. He called her ungrateful. He called her a burden. He accused her of trapping him with pregnancy, as if the child was a chain instead of a blessing. He said she was making him poor. He said she was making him ashamed. Amara began to cry. Not loud, not theatrical, just quiet tears that slid down her cheeks like the body releasing pain it can no longer hold. Kaito saw the tears and felt not compassion, but rage. That is what happens when a person has trained themselves to fear vulnerability. They treat vulnerability as an enemy, so when someone shows it, they attack. He walked to the door, yanked it open, and pointed outside. He said, "Leave. Go to your mother house. I do not want you here." Amara looked at him as if she did not understand the language. Leave, in the late evening, with a heavy belly, with no plan, with the road dark. Leave, as if she was trash. Leave, as if the child was not his. She whispered, "Kaito, please." "It is late," he said. "I said leave." Neighbors heard the shouting. Curtains moved. Doors cracked open. People listened with that painful curiosity that mixes concern with gossip. But no one stepped in yet. People hesitate in domestic storms because they fear becoming the next target. Amara stood up slowly, holding her belly, and walked toward the door. She did not beg again. Something in her dignity rose like a shield. If she begged, she would be teaching him that cruelty works. If she begged, she would be feeding his ego. She chose silence, and silence sometimes is the loudest refusal. She stepped outside into the night. Kaido slammed the door behind her. That slam was not only a sound, it was a karmic seed planted with force. Amara walked down the road, each step careful. Her breathing was tight. Her belly felt like a weight and a miracle at the same time. She tried to focus on her baby, whispering softly, "We will be okay. We will be okay." A few minutes later, she felt a sharp pain, not like the usual discomfort. This was different. It was like her body warning her that stress had crossed a line. She stopped and leaned against a wall. The night felt colder. The street felt wider. The silence felt cruel. This is where the story could become only tragedy. But karma has many faces. Sometimes karma arrives as consequence for the cruel one. Sometimes karma arrives as protection for the vulnerable. Sometimes karma arrives as awakening for both. Across the street, an older woman named Mama Leia saw Amara leaning against the wall. Mama Leia was known in the community as someone who did not speak many words, but whose eyes missed nothing. She walked over with the steady speed of someone who has lived long enough to know when a moment matters. She asked, "My daughter, what are you doing here at this hour?" Amara tried to speak, but the pain tightened her throat. Mama Leia did not demand explanation. She looked at Amara's face, the tears, the belly, the way her hands trembled. Mama Leia said, "Come." She guided Amara into her home, gave her water, helped her sit, and sent her grandson running to call a midwife. The midwife arrived, checked Amara, and frowned. She said the stress is dangerous. The baby is reacting. She needs rest and care immediately. Mama Leia listened and then said a sentence it would later echo like prophecy. Some men think they can throw away a woman, but they forget they cannot throw away the consequences. Meanwhile, back in Kaito's house, the silence after the storm felt like victory at first. He sat, breathing hard, telling himself he had shown strength. He poured another drink, because the ego loves celebration, even when it has done something shameful. Then the phone rang, or someone banged on the door, depending on how you imagine it. But the message was the same. A neighbor told him Amara was in trouble. The baby might be in trouble. Kaido felt a sudden coldness move through him. Not compassion at first. Fear. Fear is often the first honest emotion a cruel person feels when consequences begin to appear. He rushed out, walking fast, trying to act like a concerned husband now. But the neighborhood saw the change in his face. People can forgive mistakes, but they remember cruelty, especially when it is done to someone carrying life. He arrived at Mama Leia's house. The door was closed. He knocked. Mama Leia opened it just enough to look at him. Her eyes were calm, but her calm was not soft. Kaito said, "I came for my wife." Mama Leia said, "Your wife?" Kaito tried to push past her, but Mama Leia did not move. She said, "When she was crying outside, she was not your wife then. When she was holding her belly in pain, she was not your wife then. Now that you smell trouble, you remember the word wife." Kaito felt anger rise. He said, "Do not talk to me like that." Mama Leia smiled slightly. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of an elder who has watched enough life to stop being impressed by loud men. She said, "I will talk to you as karma talks to you, without fear." Kaito demanded to see Amara. Mama Leia allowed him in but warned him to keep his voice low. He entered and saw Amara lying on a mat. eyes half closed, breathing carefully. The midwife sat nearby, watching. For a moment, Kaito felt something like regret. He opened his mouth to speak, maybe to apologize, maybe to justify, maybe to promise. But before he could, the midwife stood and said, "You are the cause of this stress. If you want to help, sit quietly. If you cannot control yourself, leave." Kaito was shocked. Nobody spoke to him like that. In his world, men commanded and women adjusted. But here, in the face of life and risk, his social power meant nothing. The baby did not care about his pride. The body did not negotiate with his ego. Nature has its own authority, and it is older than patriarchy. He sat down, silent, and watched Tamara breathe. He watched her wince. He watched the midwife work. He watched Mama Leia move around the room, preparing herbs, water, cloth, doing what needed to be done without drama. Hours passed. In those hours, Kaito had nothing to do but face himself. And that is the punishment many people cannot handle. Not jail, not poverty, not even public shame. The worst punishment for an untrained mind is stillness, because stillness exposes the truth. He replayed the moment he pointed to the door. He remembered her whisper, "It is late." He remembered the tears. He remembered the slam. For the first time, he saw the scene not from his ego, but from outside, like a stranger watching a man throw a pregnant woman into the night. He felt sick. This is one of the hidden mercies of karma. Karma does not only punish through external events. Karma also turns your inner eyes on, so you cannot hide from what you have become. Near dawn, Amara's condition stabilized. The midwife said she needed several days of rest. No shouting, no stress, no heavy work, and most importantly, emotional safety. The word safety hit Kaito like a stone. He realized his home had become unsafe, not because of thieves, but because of him. Mama Leia looked at him and said, "Listen carefully. If you bring her back to the same environment, you might lose both mother and child. And if that happens, you will carry that karma in your bones." Kaito nodded quickly. Desperate, he said, "I will change." Mama Leia said, "Words are cheap. Change is expensive." This is the turning point in the story. Some versions of this kind of tale end with karma destroying the cruel man completely. But real life is more complex. Karma can destroy, yes, but karma can also transform if the person becomes sincere enough to learn. Kaito went home later that morning. The neighborhood was awake now. People watched him. Some looked angry. Some looked curious. Some looked disappointed. The respect he had relied on began to feel unstable. He entered his house and saw the place where the fight happened. The table, the door, the empty chair where Amara used to sit. Suddenly, the house did not feel like a kingdom. It felt like a hollow shell. He realized he had been measuring his masculinity by control. He thought if his wife feared him, it meant he was strong. But now he saw the truth. If your wife fears you, you are not strong. You are unsafe. He remembered something an elder once told him long ago when he was young. A man who cannot govern his own mind will always try to govern other people's bodies. That sentence now sounded like a diagnosis of his life. The next day, Kaito went to see a local teacher known for spiritual guidance. Not a fancy person, not a performer, just a quiet man named Dalen who spoke about discipline, cause and effect, and compassion. People called him wise because he did not sell easy comfort. He told people the truth they tried to avoid. Kaito sat in front of Dalen and tried to explain what happened in a way that made him look less guilty. He said Amara disrespected him. He said stress made him react. He said he did not mean it. Daelan listened and then asked, "Did you open the door and point outside?" Kaito whispered yes. Daelan asked, "Was she pregnant?" Kaito whispered yes. Daelan asked, "Was it night?" Kaito whispered yes. Daelan said, "Then do not decorate it with excuses. Call it what it is. You chose cruelty." Kaito felt his chest tighten. His pride wanted to fight, but his fear was stronger now. He asked, "What can I do?" Daelan said, "First, stop thinking your apology is the medicine. Your apology is only the beginning of taking responsibility. Second, understand karma. Karma is not only what happens to you later. Karma is the habit you build inside yourself right now. If you keep the habit of cruelty, you will keep producing suffering. If you replace the habit with discipline and compassion, you can produce different consequences." Kaito asked, "Can I erase what I did?" Daelan said, "You cannot erase the fact that you did it, but you can prevent it from becoming your permanent character. You can repair what can be repaired. You can accept the shame without turning it into anger. You can protect the child by becoming a safe person." Kaito sat in silence, because for the first time he understood the real cost. Becoming safe would require him to kill the part of himself that enjoyed dominance, and that part of himself would not die quietly. Kaito began trying. He brought food to Mama Leia house. He apologized to Amara, not once, but repeatedly, without demanding forgiveness. He offered to let her stay with her mother until she felt ready. He stopped drinking with Seifu. When Seifu mocked him, Kaito did not laugh along. He walked away. That small action was a seed too, but change is never smooth. One day, weeks later, Amara returned home cautiously. She wanted to prepare for the baby in a familiar space, but she also needed evidence that the home would not become a battlefield again. At first, Kaito was gentle. He helped. He cleaned. He spoke softly. He even looked proud of himself for acting decent, which is a common early stage of growth. A person celebrates basic kindness because they are not used to it. Then pressure returned. Money issues, work stress, a neighbor gossiped, a small argument about something trivial, and Kaito felt the old fire rise. This is the real test, not when life is calm. The test is when the old habit knocks on the door and asks to be invited in again. Kaito clenched his jaw. He wanted to shout. He wanted to remind Amara who he was. He wanted to win. But then he saw her and touch her belly automatically, protective, and he remembered the night outside, the pain, the risk. He remembered Mama Leia words. Words are cheap. Change is expensive. So he did something new. He walked outside. He breathed. He sat on the step and let the anger pass through without turning it into weapons. This is one of the most important teachings about karma. The moment you do not act on a harmful impulse, you have already changed destiny. Over time, Kaito learned that manhood is not volume. It is restraint. It is responsibility. It is the ability to protect rather than intimidate. He learned that love cannot breathe in fear. And he learned that if he wanted a family, he had to become a person worthy of being trusted by it. Amara also changed, but in a different way. She became clearer. Her compassion remained, but she stopped confusing compassion with tolerating harm. She told Kaito, "I will not stay in a house where my child learns fear. I will forgive, but forgiveness does not mean I accept the old you. If you return to that, I will leave." Some people might think that sounds harsh. It is not harsh. It is wisdom. A boundary is not revenge. A boundary is protection. And protection is a form of compassion, especially when a child is coming. The baby was born months later, a healthy child with a loud cry, as if announcing to the world that life continues even after storms. Neighbors came to see. Elders blessed the child. Mama Laya arrived, held the baby, and looked at Kaito. She said, "This child is not your trophy. This child is your teacher." Kaito nodded, tears in his eyes, not tears of self-pity, but tears of recognition. He understood that every time he chose patience, he was planting peace for his child. Every time he chose cruelty, he would be planting fear. And here is where karma shows another face. Karma is not only what punishes you. Karma is what you pass on. If Kaito stayed cruel, his child might grow up either fearing men or becoming one. That is karma transmitted through behavior, not magic. But if Kaito became disciplined and kind, his child would inherit a different atmosphere, a different model, a different fate. Years later, people in the neighborhood would still remember that night. Some would say Kaito was lucky that nothing worse happened. Others would say he was cursed because shame followed him for a long time. But the deeper truth is that the night was a mirror. It showed him who he was. And then life gave him a choice: remain that person or awaken. Not everyone awakens. Many people double down. They blame the wife. They blame the community. They blame fate. They become more abusive. They become more bitter. Their karma becomes heavier because they keep adding weight. Kaito did not become perfect, but he became aware. And awareness is the beginning of liberation. Now let me bring this story close to your own life, because you might not have thrown anyone out, but you might recognize the impulse behind it. The impulse to control, the impulse to punish, the impulse to make someone pay emotionally so you can feel powerful for a moment. That impulse is the seed of suffering. The Buddhist style of wisdom teaches that suffering begins in the mind, in craving, in aversion, in ignorance. When you crave control, you become violent when you cannot get it. When you are averse to discomfort, you lash out to push it away. When you are ignorant of impermanence, you demand that people in life stay the way you want. But when you train the mind, you begin to see impulses as weather. They rise, they pass. You do not have to become them. I have seen people destroy families because they could not tolerate being questioned. I have also seen people save families because they learned to pause. The pause is holy. The pause is where karma changes direction. If you are someone who has been hurt like Amara, I want you to hear this clearly. Compassion does not require you to stay in danger. Forgiveness does not require you to accept repeated harm. Your safety matters. Your dignity matters. Your children's future matters. Boundaries are not cruelty. Boundaries are wisdom. If you are someone who has hurt others like Kaito, I want you to hear this too. Your past actions matter, but they do not have to become your identity forever. The path of awakening begins when you stop defending harm and start taking responsibility, not with speeches, but with daily restraint, daily humility, daily repair. This story is also about the community. It matters that Mama Leia stepped in. It matters that the midwife spoke with authority. It matters that Dalen told the truth. When communities protect the vulnerable, karma becomes lighter for everyone. When communities stay silent, harm becomes normal, and normal harm becomes a culture. So when you watch a story like this, do not only ask, did karma punish him? Ask, what did karma teach? Karma taught that control is fragile. Karma taught that cruelty is expensive. Karma taught that life will not always stop you immediately, but it will eventually bring you face to face with what you have done. And karma taught that transformation is possible, but only if the ego is willing to lose its throne. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story stirred something in you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone's power became their downfall, or where someone learned to change before it was too late? And if you want more long stories that turn karma, destiny, compassion, and awakening into something you can actually feel and apply, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and stay close. Your support keeps these stories flowing, and your voice helps build a community where people choose wisdom over impulse. Until next time, keep your heart compassionate, keep your mind disciplined, and remember that the strongest person is not the one who can dominate others, but the one who can master themselves